Every once in a while, a TikTok trend comes along well, it's more than just a trend. Something that seems really simple, like a grocery haul, can go viral for reasons that have absolutely nothing to do with what's actually in the shopping cart. Today, we're going to unpack one of those stories, a story that sparked this huge, global conversation about money, parenting, and some of our deepest anxieties.
Because that's really the core question here, isn't it? How on earth did one family shopping trip, and specifically their purchase of 32 frozen pizzas, become this digital flashpoint for judgment, for empathy, and for a really fascinating look into the human mind?
All right, so to really get the massive reaction, we first need to understand what actually happened. It all started with a type of video we've all seen a million times, the grocery haul, where someone just shows off what they bought. But this one hit different.
The first thing that made everyone stop scrolling was the total on that receipt, $476.68. I mean, that's a pretty big number for a single trip, and it immediately put the whole thing under a microscope.
And then there was this, the number that became the symbol for the entire phenomenon, 32. 32 frozen pizzas. It wasn't just a detail on a list, it became a meme, a kind of shorthand for a whole set of ideas the internet was just itching to argue about.
And argue, they did. Just look at the scale of this thing. One version of this video racked up over 4.6 million views. We're talking hundreds of thousands of likes and tens of thousands of shares. This wasn't some niche little spat, this was a massive public event.
It's also really important to clarify something here. While a real person sparked this whole thing, the 32 Pizzas mom became something bigger, more of a symbol, a composite character that millions of people projected their own feelings about money, health, and family onto.
And those projections, well, they split the internet into two very different camps. The reaction was immediate, it was emotional, and it was deeply polarized, creating this fascinating, real-time case study in digital behavior.
On one side, you had some really harsh criticism. The spending was called diabolical, an act of gluttony, and a lot of people raised concerns about nutrition and health. But on the other side, a really powerful wave of empathy started to build. People were saying, I get it, connecting the behavior directly to their own pasts, especially if they grew up with food insecurity.
And this really gets to the heart of what was going on. This was never just about one person's shopping choices. It became a kind of digital moral policing, where the internet took all of its collective anxieties and just projected them onto a single visible target.
This is where the story gets really, really interesting. To understand all of this, we have to move beyond just what happened and ask a much deeper question: why? Why would somebody buy 32 pizzas? The answer, it turns out, is rooted deep in our psychology.
So the first piece of the puzzle is something a lot of us can probably relate to: emotional spending. This is when we use the act of buying stuff not because we need it, but to manage our feelings. To get a temporary escape from stress or sadness.
And our brains are totally wired for it. It's a loop, right? First, an emotional trigger hits. That leads to a purchase, which gives our brain a little rush of that feel-good chemical, dopamine. And for a moment, we get relief. But, as many of us know, that high is often followed by a crash of guilt or regret, creating this really powerful and often negative cycle.
But there's a second, even deeper layer here: the scarcity mindset. This is a powerful, unconscious fear that you'll simply never have enough. It's not about your current bank balance. It's like a ghost of the past, often rooted in the trauma of having gone without, especially when it comes to something as basic as food.
So this means we have to reframe the behavior. From the outside, it might look like a poor financial choice, but if you look at it through a trauma-informed lens, it's actually a survival instinct kicking in, an unconscious drive to stockpile resources to feel safe from a threat that still feels very real. This mindset shows up in some really specific ways. Things like stockpiling food, overspending just to create a buffer of security, or making this powerful, unconscious vow to give your own kids the abundance you never had. Buying 32 pizzas isn't really about dinner. It's about trying to soothe a deep-seated anxiety.
So this brings us to the most important question of all. How do we move from just understanding this behavior to actually addressing it in a constructive way? This isn't about shame. It's about building financial resilience.
And that resilience doesn't start with a spreadsheet. A simple budget can actually feel really restrictive and trigger the exact same anxieties you're trying to solve. Real financial wellness begins by looking inward, at the psychology and the emotions that are shaping every single financial decision we make.
When it comes to emotional spending, the very first step is just awareness. Ask yourself, what feeling sends me to the checkout line? Is it stress? Is it boredom? Once you can identify that trigger, you can start to find a healthier way to cope. Go for a walk, call a friend, anything that isn't tied directly to your wallet.
Now, addressing a scarcity mindset, that's a deeper process. It starts with acknowledging the past trauma and just reflecting on where that fear began. From there, practices like gratitude can actually help shift your focus from what's missing to what you have. And, so importantly, there is absolutely no shame in seeking help. Financial therapists are trained specifically to help people heal these exact kinds of wounds.
And this brings us full circle, right back to parenting. Because ultimately, the most powerful lesson we teach our kids about money isn't through lectures or allowances. It's through the healthy, mindful, and compassionate example we model for them every single day.
So, let's end with this. The story of the 32 Pizzas Mom isn't really about pizza at all. It's about how our pasts shape our presents. It's an invitation to look beyond our own receipts, to ask ourselves with curiosity and with compassion, what does my spending say about my story? And what new chapter do I want to write?